And we are live. And yes, the usual suspect, Brian Summer, is back with me, but this time for the Enterprise Month in Review. Brian, hello.
Hello, John. Actually, I know we're, I don't know, 1,000 miles away, but it's a pleasure to actually do this from my desk and my home and not sitting beside you for days on end. How many different analyst things has this been this last couple of months?
I won't take that personal, Brian. I had some good
No, I
times.
don't.
We stayed at some of the best and worst hotels in the world, and oh my gosh, we competed for travel misadventures. I think you got the top spot, but I got a really nice finish at number 2 with a pretty bad one myself. And here we are. And if you're in the LinkedIn audience stream, it's starting to hit you. So please let us know you can see us. I have threatened in the promo to bring someone from the audience onto the show. It might be you. It could happen. Uh, if not,
It will be kind.
we will. If not, Brian and I have some secondary entertainment planned for you. A new feature we call the highs and the lows of the spring season. So, anyhow, I don't know what kind of turnout we are going to get because I suspect some people are in Memorial Day or bank holiday long weekend mode, depending on location. Hello, Thomas. But Thomas knows the best way to talk about enterprise software is with a beer or spike seltzer in hand. So, Thomas, I hope you have your drink of choice ready because we got a lot to do. And by the way, if you're not following Thomas's blog, you really should because Thomas has been on fire lately, also on LinkedIn. Thomas, you're killing it, man. You're making me look bad even, and I don't usually say that about the flotsam I see on LinkedIn. Okay, we have our infamous slide deck as usual. So this is the order of programming, and Brian, do you want to tell the audience what they got in store? And let's skip the unpredictions again and eventually remove that from our template. But what else we got?
I keep sending it to you on a pre-edit. You never catch it. So anyway.
I know. What are we doing, man? Anyway.
All right. Well, so it's the usual stuff. We're going to start off with the buzzword deal. We'll move from there to talk about a number of different underrated stories. You've got your couple you're going to start with, and I'm going to warn the audience. I saw John's. They're crunchy today. So then mine come right behind there. Then we have the halftime deal. And we really do want some strong audience participation today. So I've got my hopes up that those of you on the line or coming on the line are going to contribute. And don't take John's threat too hard here. We will actually treat you real nice and kind if you are willing to come online. We also have some interesting whips and pieces at the back end of this, and we'll have that inspirational deal. So, John, next slide.
And Greg, welcome. I believe that's you. Hey, AI or no AI? Yeah, look what's behind the shell today. All right. So, without further ado, we have the monthly buzzwords and overhyped tech. Brian, you always have a dandy. What do we got this month?
Today we have the demo bot that was inspired by a presenter you and I saw this week. This is when something looks human but talks like a bot, and we had to sit through a presentation like that. I won't say much more than that, but the demo bot is
oh my gosh.
it is no fun to listen to, that's for sure. That's not how you want to get your enterprise software content served up, by listening to it in one of the slowest, monotonous, droning voices ever. Anyway.
I thought we were trying to take the robot out of the human instead of making the human into the bot. It feels like we're headed backwards, Brian. What is happening, man?
That was a mess. Okay. Here you
go.
Oh,
I almost forgot about this.
Yeah. How could you forget about it? I snuck this in, John, because maybe the listeners didn't know it, but somebody put together a list of the top 50 thought leaders in enterprise software. And drum roll, please. It turns out that of the top 50, the Diginomica crew got several of the plum top spots on enterprise software. and a number of other Diginomica people were, well, they didn't call them honorable mentions, but they were clearly, they're people on the masthead who were considered really strong contenders. And you and I made that cut, and we're going to have to watch our back because some of those other Diginomica folks are going to be nipping at our heels next year. Phil Wainwright was another one from, that made the list with you and I. And I'm not really
Stuart Lachlan also. We cleaned up, man.
Stuart. Oh yeah.
We cleaned up. Brian, I don't know about you, but I haven't been so honored to be on an AI curated list in a long time. That is really an amazing feeling.
Well, I thought the parts where they, if you read this piece, and please do, just know when you get to the biography sections in the back on who all the 50 people were, they definitely, I think, used AI to scrape some screens somewhere, and some of that biographical stuff I think is a bit dated. Anyway, but always nice to be included in something, so I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, hopefully the plaques are in the mail. Looking forward to those. Suitable for framing.
Well, I cleared a spot on one of my walls just to add that citation. Anyway,
all right.
So now we go to. Let's get your first article of the day.
Oh yeah, I know you're a little worried about this one, but it's actually going to be a lot easier sledding, I think, than you think. Though I do want to have a little bit of an AI geek moment with y'all today, but I'm not going to go deeply into this open and closed article by Stephen O'Grady of Red Monk, but hopefully you track his work, because I would say on like a signal to noise ratio, he's probably one of the better who's ever blogged in our industry from the tech and open source perspective on enterprise software. But in this particular piece of my underrated stories for the month, he's talking about basically the competition between the so-called frontier models and various kinds of open source models that are trying to nip at the heels and sort of keep up, right? And it's an interesting discussion, but I think the thing that I really wanted to call out here is a few breakthroughs that I think are happening on the enterprise side. And Brian and I both have some pretty serious. What's up with the wind chimes? Brian and I both have some pretty serious critiques of AI and enterprise software and what vendors are up to. But this is sort of like on the happier side, which is in these kinds of benchmarking, and benchmarking in and of itself is, I would argue, pretty problematic. But smaller models aren't doing as well on a lot of these compared to the frontier models, and this shows up on the slide curation. Let's see. What does it say about the small models are extremely competitive in specialized disciplines, but lag behind on general performance? What I'm here to tell you is that the general performance part doesn't really matter for a lot of enterprise use cases. And so the promise here is that using certain kinds of smaller models is actually going to work better and make AI more affordable and effective, because you're not worried about the frontier model game that the big AI vendors are playing. You're worried about getting better results for your company and your team and all of that. And alongside that, the other really big thing that's happening is that people have realized that in the enterprise space that it's not about the raw capabilities really of a frontier model in most cases. It's really about two things. It's about context, which I talked ad nauseum about last month. I'm not going to do it this time, but it's about providing models with the right context, which includes your customer data and what I call real-time organizational truth, but basically whatever the agent needs to be aware of in order to be useful and appear semi-intelligent. It's about context, and it's also about, sometimes it's called the agentic harness, which I know is one heck of a yucko buzzword. But the idea is that you're basically surrounding the agent with a whole series of capabilities and guardrails to keep it on track, including verifier tools. And it's something of a deterministic framework. In other words, the agent might still make a mistake, but it won't be able to post something inappropriate because it'll get stopped by the so-called harness, which will contain like, nope, you don't qualify. You're not authorized. You don't have the authorization. your information is not valid, all of that. And so these breakthroughs, these two things are making it possible for the smaller models that aren't faring well in these benchmarks and the more affordable open source models to come into play. And that is the best part of the enterprise AI story. There are some other parts that are not so good. And I think we're going to hit on some of those by the time this episode happens. But anyway, that's it. So, Brian, see, it wasn't actually all that hard to get through that piece. We made it, man. We made it.
I thought the best part of that was on the different performance standards, because if you need to take your kid to elementary school, you don't get the fastest high performance automobile that you need. You don't take them there in a Bugatti Veyron or something like that.
Not unless you're a massive tool. But anyway.
Yeah, we all know some folks who would do that. But what you know, I think we still need to be thinking more clearly about you need to get the right tool for the job, and that's what I think. It's nice to know that the study wasn't saying that these more limited, more specific type of LLMs, for example, are they're not saying they're problematic. They're just maybe not as fast. And to that point, I just go, so what? I mean, if they're more purpose built for a particular role, and then more power to them.
100%. And in a lot of cases, they're going to be just as performant as you need for your use cases. And that opens up a lot of possibilities for customers. And it doesn't mean that these architectures aren't expensive and challenging in certain ways, but it really does open up a lot of possibilities. So that's sort of the whole point that I wanted to make with that article. Tracy wanted to say hello, and Tracy is a Hall of Fame participant on my shows, including this one. Tracy, if you feel like coming on camera later, will you let us know? I'd like to get your reactions to kind of what you've seen this spring, and also our article choices, et cetera. This would be in about 20 minutes. So you have a chance to kind of get a feel for things. Let me know if you want to come. Love to have you on for a few minutes. Anyhow, we'll see how it goes. If you don't, that's okay too. I know that I'm having a bad hair day. Maybe you are too. I had to come on cam, but you don't. So anyhow, on we go to my second story. Okay, here we go. If they can keep me from repeating things they already know. Yeah, indeed. So the AI decision your board is forcing has more uncertainty than anyone is admitting. This is also a pretty meaty piece, Brian, from John Belden at Upper Edge. And John is one of my favorite enterprise bloggers for some time now. And he talks about a bunch of AI transformation uncertainties and all the exposure underneath them, which is really, really interesting. He talks about business and competitive pressures that AI vendors are facing, as well as security and sustainability pressure. And then he talks about customers and what they're facing, including issues like technology, environment, pricing, implementation, and business model and talent and governance. It's a pretty thorough laundry list of issues that organizations face. And, he talks about different AI investment strategies, efficiency, elevation, transformation. Each requires different investments, governance, and different definitions of success. And many organizations pursue all three in the same business case without establishing which one will be held accountable to deliver. And that works until a program hits a decision point where their strategies point in opposite directions, which they will. I've seen that a lot already, Brian, the tensions between efficiency and growth per se, if you want to, slice and dice it that way. I thought it was a really good kind of gut check article for customers to kind of sit down and work through maybe in their next AI related meeting.
Agreed. And I thought there were a couple other issues like what you see on the slide about the sustainability and security pressure points, particularly like how it tells the story of how Anthropic withheld Mythos. I think those are all kind of cautionary deals that people want to be aware of. But more importantly, I do think we're going to see the pendulum swinging back, and I'll talk a little bit about this maybe during the halftime show, where executives are having to do a stop. Let's take a pulse on where we're really at right now, and do we need to make some course corrections here in our initial headlong no holds barred, overzealous kind of leap into AI? Do we need to be a bit more prescribed and premeditated in our thinking and how we're going to approach this? All of which are good concerns to put out on the table.
Tracy says, not on camera. She's doing home renovations today, addicted to do it yourself. Well, Tracy, good luck on the DIY, and we will catch you another time. You may want to put that lottery ticket in your back pocket and cash it in on another episode where Brian and I are going off. Brian, we are arrived at your top stories. And
Yeah,
what a nice photo of Bill McDermott.
Not my picture. This was right out of was this Fast Company or Wired? Fast Company, I believe. The writer for this story watched the same keynote that I did from ServiceNow just recently, and what was interesting to me was, he's talking about how the agentic stuff is starting to change, if you will, the nature of power and data, and how things, he's giving voice to the whole dashboardless kind of world, and a foreboding around looking at input screens that have little logos of your favorite ERP vendor are going to be going away. That's not the future of the world. It's a completely different new kind of UX. This is not necessarily a new idea, but it was interesting because I watched the event live, was watching the reaction and the way they talked about it, this new kind of world that basically deflates the whole original value prop or the hype around some of the old school ERP folks, and moves the needle of the discussion to something else entirely, which are a whole new set of problems that can be solved relying on some of the data that's in those other systems, but it really is moving things forward. Again, I'm not saying that Bill's got the hottest, newest, latest idea, but he's really socializing the daylights out of it, and he did a good job of it at that conference.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting conversation I've had with a bunch of different executives as well, like some variations on that. And I know that savvy vendors are having a look at how, including some ERP vendors, on how their sort of traditional navigation works. And because I don't agree that everyone's just going to be functioning within a prompt, and I'm one of those people that doesn't agree that dashboards are dead either. I think dashboards can still be incredibly useful myself, but I do think the purpose is going to change. So talking with Oracle's Steve Moran about this, and we talked about how screens become the screens that you want to see, they could even be created on the fly, but they're about validating what you're seeing. So if you see something served up, you might want to validate where that information is coming from. So you're going to click on a link and you're going to want to go there. But it's not so much completing a workflow, it's checking on something. Or another thing is just exploring data is going to become important. So, exploring what you're seeing starts to become an issue as well. And so I think it's like a huge rethink. And it will be interesting to see which vendors come up with the stuff that enterprise users find compelling, because I don't think it's going to be that you're just interacting with a single prompt, for example. I think sometimes we're going to want to dig deeper, but we'll see how it goes. I think McDermott hit a chord there.
Mm-hmm.
Happy Friday. What's your opinion on OpenAI potentially entering the IT services space by partnering with other major IT firms like Accenture, Cognizant, and others to provide AI solutions that could be leveraged in customer engagements and managed services? Well, this is interesting, and sure, we can answer that question. By the way, it's not just OpenAI. Obviously, Anthropic is doing the same thing, and we will see other pure AI vendors doing similar. And it could be compelling in some cases. A lot of times, it comes with the forward deployed engineer lingo that we've run into a little bit more lately. Some of that makes sense as far as putting engineers on project sites and helping to, kind of engineer technology to get the result you want. I'm a big fan of that. I like that a lot better than the naive idea that software engineers are going away just because you can code a little faster, which is one of the most ridiculous wrong predictions we've heard in the last couple of years, and the hiring numbers, frankly, prove that as hiring of software engineers comes back. But anyway, I think it's interesting. I'm a little bit skeptical just because if I'm looking for AI results on my project, I probably don't nothing impersonal to Accenture or Cognizant, but Cognizant and OpenAI are probably not my top choices. I tend to like a leaner, meaner, industry focused team that's building vertical solutions for me on more of a kind of a elbow to elbow level of co-innovation. But I'm not saying that it's not a good thing to see these recombinations, and frankly, customer choice is always healthy in enterprise software. Brian, would you care to take a shot at it?
Yeah, and in the Jane, you ignorant, whatever kind of mode, I'd have to say you took the bait and went down to the programming kind of uh, services work when there's a whole nother piece out there around like the consultative stuff and outsourcing. It's more than one niche, I guess, and I think it's important that we realize that some aspects of the services industry are just going to get hammered with this stuff. I see it all the time, and uh, I would agree on that each piece is going to have to be looked at and dealt with individually. I'm particularly focused right now on the more consultative aspects of it because there's all kinds of dire predictions about how spend a few seconds with one of the main general purpose tools and you've eliminated the need to deal with a consultant. That is maybe true for a lot of entry level kind of staffers who used to do a lot of go getting of information or fill in a bunch of spreadsheets. But if you really want to know what's going on in a company, I had a long conversation with an exec on a plane ride this week. And we both agreed that what companies really want is they want a very seasoned or senior person with tons of knowledge of everybody in their industry. And they want that person to actually physically show up, walk the halls, and see all the other stuff that no one's going to ever type into a prompt and figure out exactly what do they do differently. So it's definitely a whole new world. Is it going to be as leveraged as it used to be? Nope. But definitely a new world. We've got some comments coming in.
Yeah. We got Thomas Webernight responding around the acknowledgement that implementation is not easy in the case of OpenAI, defense against Anthropic having the upper hand in the enterprise, although I think OpenAI has a ways to go to get to where Anthropic has gotten in the enterprise conversations of late. But it's welcome on two sides to me. It's welcome from the customer side in terms of choice, even if I might not think those are the top choices for customers. They should have them. And then also pressure on the implementation, like let's make these implementations to these more modern solutions and these AI governance platforms easier for customers. So, I welcome it, but I think it's really early days in terms of how much success. And one of the reasons I tend to be a little skeptical is I'm a little more sympathetic towards the vendor plays that are closer to the data. And when you're an implementation provider in a big AI company, you're a little bit removed from the crucial customer data that I think is most important to getting agentic AI right. So that would be my sort of hesitancy to fully endorse. Tracy, on SAP announcing 62 AI agents, that's a lot of agents. A lot of those agents were actually sub agents, and vendors are all over the place with this because Workday, for example, has announced like more of a series of overarching agents that cover a lot of ground. Oracle has announced more than 1,000 embedded AI agents. I don't think there's like any right answer to all of that. It's really more, are you delivering for your customers the best options at the best price points? And that's where, folks like Brian and I have to really hold up a magnifying glass, and we all do, and say, are we going to be able to get the value out of this, and what is it going to take? So that's a longer conversation. And then Tracy follows up, it is a little terrifying when I think of the client having more and more ways to do something technical super fast. I received a lot of late night phone calls, a few in tears, for an automated thing that caused a huge problem. Okay, Brian, riff on that one.
I've had those calls too. When you're betting the business on a piece of software that wasn't fully baked, fully tested, or doesn't have the right controls, guardrails, whatever in place. Been there, seen it, done it. I don't like the headaches and everything else. I saw something, and I believe it was at an Oracle event a couple of weeks ago, where they were talking about how they aren't necessarily interested in winning the award for the most agents. What they want is they want the most agents that work, exceedingly well every time. And I think that's the exact right goal that companies and vendors ought to be having is, yes, I'll take an agent if it does improve productivity, improve ROI, and it works every damn time. Did you put in all the guardrails, controls, everything else to make sure that happens? I think that's what people want. I haven't seen or met the exec yet who is willing to hold their accounting systems to the same standard as hand grenades and horseshoes, which is close enough is good enough. That doesn't work in the real world. And
No, it
Tracy's
does
right.
not. And yeah, and we are having trouble getting through the slides, which is a really good sign. That's the whole point of the show, folks. So please keep your trenchant, there's my word, Brian, keep your trenchant comments coming.
Okay.
And we shall see. All right, Brian, let's go to your next.
I got to put my glass on to remember this.
Oh
one.
yeah, you got a white paper for us, huh?
Oh yeah. This was an interesting study. They figured
By
out.
the way, folks, enjoy your white paper over Memorial Day weekend that Brian is recommending for you. I hope you like it.
You're most welcome, everyone. I love it when somebody actually puts the scientific rigor to some of the hyperbole that we see coming out in the market. But this study was really interesting because it found out that if you're a job seeker and you apply for a job and the vendor is using some sort of recruiting applicant tracking system that relies on one of the major AI tools to help score, grade, translate, whatever the applications, resumes, if it's using, say, Anthropic or OpenAI's products, what have you, then it tends to give much higher scores to resumes that were actually written and formatted in the style of that generative AI capability that that vendor does. So if you can find out what's behind the software that your hopeful new employer uses, if you know that generative AI tool, then quickly rewrite your resume using that tool's format standards, and it will improve your odds of being shortlisted tremendously. But if you go to the trouble to create a highly artisanal, handcrafted, bespoke kind of resume, and it reads well, it's very compelling and everything else, it's never going to get really picked off and recommended by the AI tool in the underwriting ATS. And all of this kind of stuff does is it just infuriates me, particularly when I run into HR leaders who don't care about these issues, who think, job seekers just somehow auto magically, I'm going to use that word today, John, that job seekers auto magically somehow will figure this out and will then perfect their resumes to align with some of the stupidity. It doesn't mean that the employer is getting better people. It just gets people who play the game better. And is that really the kind of person you want in your firm?
Yeah. Why do I get the feeling that we're circling the bowl of reduced expectations around getting talent right? It just doesn't seem good right now. We need something different, but maybe we can get into that a little further. Tracy says, yes, laser focused niche down that is consistently accurate, then I will be a fan. Tracy, if I can just comment on that for a moment, there are a lot of vendors that are getting closer to providing that now because they've figured out enough how to constrain these architectures in their so-called harnesses with context, if you can survive that buzzword, that they can now embed AI into some core processes, and this can be pretty effective on a much more focused scale. But the one thing I wanted to note is that, consistently accurate really depends on your tolerance level, because you're not getting usually anywhere near 98, 99. And, but what vendors have figured out is they figured out how to stop AI from doing the wrong thing. They can't guarantee it will always do the right thing. That is a different conversation, because
Mm.
right is a much more subjective criteria that involves user input and user validation and all of that. They can stop it from, writing something writing to a record where it shouldn't, or authorizing data that it shouldn't, unless the system's hacked or something. But those are sort of deterministic things that can sit outside the agent, that can say, no, you can't do that. But to understand the right action is actually that can implicate human judgment, and that's very difficult. And so, it really depends, obviously, on what industry you're in, what compliance framework you're dealing with, and how this goes into practice. And so, yes, this is, well, I think what you described is kind of a baseline where we can now roll up our sleeves and see what we can really get done. Tracy is continuing to keep the chat busy. Let me check the follow-on comments here. Oh, this is on your most recent story, Brian. It is like the new version of interviews well but can't deliver. They just move from one role to the next every 18 months. Ouch. Something different, like people. We could use people to screen people after people apply. LOL. Tracy, wow. Where
That's
did you
so
get that idea?
that's so forward looking. Maybe we'll get to that in 2304. It may take a while.
Well, the problem, of course, right now, Brian, is that that's not even possible, right? Because of the influx of applications is beyond human scope. So we need some different solution now.
Which hits a perennial hot button with me, which is, why can't we get vendors, particularly HR vendors, but why can't we get vendors to acknowledge all of the bad behavior, fraud, criminal activity, et cetera, that citizen AI tools are inflicting onto businesses? And why don't vendors turn some of this? Oh, we can build new apps in minutes, with our new agent studio tools. Okay, well, if you could do that, then create some countermeasure applications to deal with all this other kind of junk. I sat down with a product management person of a software company just in the last few days, and I had to make this point, and a very impassioned point, that when I see this company again next year at their user conference, I expect to see a whole hour block on all the cool tech they're putting in so they can help their customers avoid getting taken. And I go, and the funniest thing was the guy admitted that their own company, their own software company, had been burned with someone using a manufactured copy of the CEO's voice to demand a payment be emailed within the next few minutes because of some fake emergency. He knew about people using AI to create incredibly bit by bit perfect duplicate invoices, not duplicate ones, but to create slightly different amounts and vendors, but would result in the loss of money. He acknowledged all this fraud's going on, not just in HR and payables, but all through the place. But the ERP vendors just didn't seem to be terribly interested in solving these very real problems. That pisses me off. And I'm sorry I use that expression, but it does that.
No one's blown a gasket yet today, but Brian is heading there now. Usually you or me, one of us is going to blow. Christopher Gaither just put out a Substack essay. Chris, I'm going to react to this comment, but just to be clear, I didn't read the essay yet, so I'm not reacting to the essay, just the comment. And comments obviously don't always tell the full story. You should check out Chris's Substack, by the way. I've read 1.5 essays now, Chris, and they're really good. How AI requires more than just clean data. It requires providence, authority, state, legal, state transitions. Previously, a human with experience and judgment stood in those gaps and made decisions. Now AI just takes a guess and keeps moving. I want to modify that a little bit, Chris. The AI doesn't have to take a guess. that if you allow that to do that, that's poor use case design on your part. Just as an example, you could have an agent that does supplier onboarding, and you could say, before we onboard the supplier, I want a human to take a look at it one more time before it does so. You could do that. Or instead of guessing, you could have much more informed information going into that context. And maybe you can live with a certain inaccuracy rate if it's significantly better than what you were getting before. So I just want to say that while you're correct, I do think that use case design is a key factor here, and I encourage customers not to passively accept what vendors serve up around that topic. Uh, yeah, more URLs from SAP. I have an article coming out on that topic on Monday, so that's a different. Creating countermeasures is difficult. The exploits just evolve. Well, that depends. Yeah, if you're bootstrapping it is. If you're an enterprise software vendor, you can do it, and talk with customers who are using some of these agents that have human supervision steps, and they do work. Does it change your ROI a little bit, but it also helps you to not have to undo things later, which is really the hidden downstream impact that impacts the AI ROI. So there you go.
Well, let me go back Christopher's leadoff point there a second ago. You're right there. You need a whole lot of that kind of stuff in there. What's fascinating to me are the vendors who never seem to account for all the human in the loop, human in the middle, whatever term you want to use in the new processes. And the reason they can't tell you how many you're going to need is because they don't have that documented anywhere in their process flows, their work process diagrams, workflows. None of that stuff exists. So then that puts them in the problem. They have no idea whether what they're trying to pitch and peddle to customers or prospects will actually result in a more cost-effective and labor-efficient method, because they just don't know where and how many of these humans, these super expert humans that you're talking about, where are they? They need super strong subject matter experts in the middle of all these kind of processes to double check the AI and and resolve some things or prove items as well. And if I have to ask a vendor, where are the tools to help me document the as is state, as well as design the to be state and calculate what the ROI potential is going to be based on all these new labor needs and costs? If I have to ask the question, I guarantee I'm asking it because the vendors are not volunteering that information because they don't have the data. They're still thinking about AI. Excuse me for pointing this so blatantly out. They're still peddling little proofs of concepts and little pilot kind of things. They're not talking about anything terribly transformational. They're sugarcoating a little bit of the old world with some of this AI stuff, but they haven't really delivered the great promise here. And it's just a frustrating environment when they can't tell me the ROI and they show no intention of figuring that out. They just go, well, that's what an integrator has to figure out for the prospect. What a kick the tire can down the road kind of answer.
Yeah, gasket blown. And I would just say to a customer, like if you're presented with the kind of AI vision that Brian described, then don't go forward with that vision. Don't do it. Don't go forward until you see a better process flow in place. So Chris, I don't want to have any further back and forth on this with you during this show, just because I don't want to get too deep into the weeds. The decision process, operational policy control is only as effective as it is entrenched. It has to be either at the lowest layer of software, the data layer, or it has to stay human, as you said. I don't totally agree, because you can use verifier tools and authenticators to basically require output that to not exceed certain thresholds or to be authorized in certain ways. So I don't agree that it's always in those layers, but yeah, you make a point there. And Chris says to you, there's at least one vendor you don't need to ask because they built the ability to control and configure that into the product. And there are vendors who have done that. It's not just one vendor, in my opinion. But Brian's point still stands. It's been a hectic conference season. We've seen a lot of vendors. AI hallucinations. Well, are Tracy's favorite, and that brings us, Brian, to your next article.
Oh, yeah. I love this. Someone's created tools that using AI to help uh, populate citations and court case citations in legal briefs and filings. But because they tend to hallucinate so many of the things that are not legitimate, and the law firms get caught using that content and getting sanctioned by the courts. So now we create a software company to catch the hallucinations that were created by a previous AI utility to keep them from getting into the filings in the first place. So I want you guys, we were just talking about ROI. Now let's think about this. We have to build additional super processes on top of the ones that the AI tools are supposedly powering to catch all the errors the AI tools are creating. And I'm thinking to myself, explain to me again how this is a more efficient, cleaner, and better way of building technology and creating value for customers. The fact that people build a solution like this to catch the AI crud that's coming out of a prior solution tells you the products are still half baked.
Oh wow, yeah, we got a bunch of people going off in the chat. Yep, indeed. This problem isn't going away. That's for sure. And Chris, yeah, no, as Thomas said, no need to be sorry. No one should ever apologize in my shows for making comments. I wanted to avoid an in-depth side conversation between you and me. That's all. But it was good that we went down that rabbit hole. But I didn't want to go all the way down, just partially down. So what do we got for our latest comment here? Oh, did we ever watch Pluribus talk about anthropomorphizing of AI, in this case, politeness? Yeah, it's ironic how the politeness of the model can really lead to problems in an enterprise use case. Personally, I'd prefer a model that is honest with me about my shortcomings and defects, because while models hallucinate, they're also pretty good at quality checking. And it's ironic that you have to ask the model to do that because it's too eager to please you. Not a particularly helpful development. And it's also resulted in a lot of lawsuits for encouraging the wrong kind of behavior as well. But that's a whole nother. Tracy says, when I was complaining to a software company person about a few things, they said, "We are a software company." They had to say it to me more than once. Ooh. Well, the good news, Tracy, is no one says they're a software company anymore. So, so whether or not they are, we shall see. But they've squeezed out of that noose and they're on to the next. Where are we in the slide deck? Christopher has a question. Ever watch Pimp My Ride? Yo, dog, I heard you like AI, so we made AI to keep your eye in check. Yeah, man. I mean, pretty much it's AI quality checking other AI, and we can just go home and do whatever it is we do, Brian. I'm not sure. I'm not. What do we do? I don't even remember anymore.
Well, I'll tell you what, Christopher, that's a reference I've never seen in any podcast I've either been on or listened in on. So kudos for pulling in the real esoteric reference there for Pimp My Ride. Anyway.
So, Brian, for our halftime show, we sometimes have an extended segment, but I don't think we're going to need to do that today because the chat has been really vigorous as we were hoping. So, but do you want to go ahead and do our little like rundowns anyway? We can kind of rifle through those.
Yeah.
So let me just set it up, and we can kind of go into that. Does that sound okay?
That's good. Go for it.
Okay. So what I'm thinking, Brian, is we share the things we liked, and then we share the things we didn't like. So in other words, you'll do 3, I'll do 3. Then you know what I mean. So what we're gonna do for y'all, Brian and I have been across many tarmacs to many events, and we have compiled our top 3 high points of the event season and our top 3 low points of the event season. And we have not compared notes. We have no idea what each other's going to say, how whether we are aligned or not. We're about to find out. So, Brian, give me your top 3.
Okay, and I'll just caveat and say I bet mine, John's are going to be very technical and specific. If I know John, mine are going to be more snarky and in your face. So my top three best things I've seen of the events this year. Number one is that marching bands aren't de rigueur at every opening day conference. Thank God, my eardrums
Woo!
can't handle it. I saw.
Less marching bands for Brian.
Yep, that's my number one. My number two is that Spirit Airlines is no longer every vendor's go-to carrier to get the analysts to the event. And number three is, and very seriously, is that I'm glad to finally see some CEOs starting to take a more realistic view of artificial intelligence and employment and some other kind of related topics like this. It's the balance is coming back, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, Brian, one thing I like that's pretty technical is because it has to do with the conference power supply, is I saw a lot less DJs this spring drowning out networking events. One of my biggest
That
pet
was a
peeves.
particularly obnoxious thing at
Oh
conferences.
my God.
They would park them everywhere. You couldn't even go out for a break and hear yourself think. That stuff.
Never
So
mind,
bad.
like trying to close a deal outside the conference. You were like basically jamming to the whatever mediocre playlist of the local
Mm.
DJ at the highest sonic volume that the event staff could dream up. And I saw a lot less of that. I did hit one show like that, but for the most part, the DJs were fewer and harder to come by, and that was really really welcome. The other thing was, uh, I did like that vendors were taking a, like you said, a more realistic view. Uh, so we heard more talk of hallucinations. We heard more talk about the future of work, and we heard like less fear mongering and a little more practicality. But every customer is going to experience that differently. So I like that a lot, and I think we finally started hearing vendors really bearing down on the problems of friction around implementation. And I would just encourage vendors to
Mm.
expand that. Like let's make it easier for these customers to get on to our latest and greatest, because that is really important if you want to absorb AI. You're not building AI on a creaky legacy foundation, so you need to get your customers onto the latest and make it as painless as possible. And I don't know why it took so long, but it's starting to really get a little more robust, that part of it, which is encouraging. I just wish custom vendors would really say, let's open it up to every kind of friction our customers experience with us, including things like licensing, contracting, and even AI pricing itself. So I guess that could lead into our bad list as well. But those were the things that I actually thought were high points. Brian, I don't even know what your low points are going to be because we did hit a few of them. But all right. And by the way, folks in the chat, feel free to give us your personal highs and lows of this particular spring season. But Brian, what were your lows?
Well, just for everyone's benefit, John and I think have been having a running contest to see who could have the absolute worst flying days getting down to or from events. And I think I'm still holding in the number one spot. I was trying to go what you could drive in 4 or 5 hours. It was taking me 13 hours to do by air. That's still my current record anyway. My worst three. Number one, every vendor you go to, I don't care what they make, they want to talk about is our agentic stack, our toolkit, agentic toolkit, our agentic marketplace, et cetera, et cetera. Every vendor's messaging sounds the same. I mean, you got to really dig to find what's a little different here versus somebody else. They all have similar tools, similar platforms, similar stuff, and yet they all believe that they're the first one to market with it, which tells me something's wrong in their competitive intel group or their product management group if they really believe that. That's number one. Number two, ROI is an absolute unknowable today. because vendors don't know what their AI costs are. They can't predict what they're going to be. Vendors don't necessarily have the tools to calculate ROI and to help customers figure that out and manage it. Anyway, ROI is a disaster. And I'm particularly upset about this because I've never been able to help a client buy, pick, and choose and implement ERP software, for example, or payroll software, whatever, unless you had a business case. They, a board of directors or the executive committee always wants to know what's it going to cost and what's this going to get us? How do we make sure that we get the best use of our capital that we're deploying on this? And I don't think any vendor has got any answers for this right now. And lastly, it was no fun this conference season dealing with the unfunded TSA. That just made flying to events awful. John, your top three. Or bottom three, I guess.
Well, honorable mention was the woman who spilled some kind of chicken cheese soup bowl all over my keyboard in the very, very back seat of a massive Delta plane in the middle seat. That was awesome. Wherever you are, lady, my keys are still contaminated by your chicken cheese, whatever. Anyway, that was honorable mention though. My top three worst ones are, I wanted to see a lot more customers just kicking ass with the vendor instead of like, they're dipping their toes into our AI solutions. Just show us a customer that's kicking ass with what you're doing now, because it shows that the momentum is there. And I don't know why this is so hard to just get over. Brian, I brought this up before, but my favorite example was a customer. This was the same customer actually on stage being asked about agentic stuff that they had barely moved into. And then I talk with them later off the stage, and they have this amazing shop floor robotics setup, that's going incredibly well, that didn't even get mentioned on the keynote stage. And it's like, what? Like, do you even know what resonates with your own audience? So that really bothered me. And I'll just add to that, when you have a customer on stage, why don't we talk about the challenges as well, and just have a little more open conversation, because it's more impressive to talk about how they overcame the challenges and the change issues than to pretend that they didn't have any. So that's on my list. Number two, what did I even write? Well, I'll just go to number three since I can't read my handwriting for number two. Number three is like, I think vendors were really in denial that a lot of their customers are having negative AI experiences at home and at work, including the kind of surveillance economy stuff that we're seeing with, key KPIs based on keystrokes or token usage and stuff like that. I think it's really important to start naming that a lot of people are having unpleasant experiences with work slop and all of that, and to start elevating the customers in your customer base that are going about AI in a different, more positive, people-centric way. And I've had arguments with vendors about this because they want to be like, well, we're not responsible for how people apply our tools and blah, 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 blah. Well, okay, you're not, but you could at least amplify the stories of customers that are doing really cool stuff and that are not using AI to crunch heads and to surveil their own workforce and to create negative experiences that have people on a whole new treadmill that, by the way, has nothing to do with the outcomes that we talk about again and again and supposedly prize. So that's those are my main top three. And if I can ever remember how to read my own handwriting, I will get to number two as well. But anyway, for now, I think we can leave it there.
And Thomas Vivernet, he had this point about
the
negative
the
talk.
CMO doesn't like the negative, but yeah, you're right, Thomas. But in fact, what you should be thinking about is what's credible to your buyers in the audience, not what you want to hear because of the training you got in marketing in your MBA program. This is actually what buyers want to hear. And I've talked with enough buyers that I know this now. They want to hear about the rough spots because, in fact, what that testifies to is the strength of your partnership. It's ultimately a success story. I'm not saying put customers on stage that had shitty implementations and didn't get results. I'm saying, include the rough edges in your success stories, and they're incredibly more credible. But I get your point, and you're right. That's why it doesn't happen, but it's not a good excuse.
Well, What I was going to add to Thomas's comment there is, I know, John. I've had these conversations with the marketing people about who to bring on and let them talk about some of the stuff, warts and all. But uh, I remember one interchange where we had to, where John and I had to convince the leadership of a company to put a different customer up on the main stage who had probably one of the most compelling, heart wrenching kind of stories you've ever heard. But it was amazing. And it actually did end up showcasing huge capabilities in the technology that I doubt even 1% of the audience even knew were in the product suite. So, um,
It's great, and occasionally a vendor will be like, "Tell us one thing we can do better," and it just shows that you're still embracing continuous improvement inside your own organization. And Trace, you talk about some clients don't want everyone to know what they did. Of course, that is true, but those are not the ones that you put on stage at that point in time. So it requires some screening. By the way, I've remembered what the final one on my list is, and I might blow a gasket when I get to it. But Thomas, I agree with you. Hence my typical closing question: what they always wanted to get, but never did. Right, exactly. Like those are the really interesting questions, and I know that the vendors are a little bit afraid sometimes, but in fact, trust, the road to trust is built through honesty and authenticity, not through over marketed soundbite solutions. And if you walk a customer on stage, don't walk them off the stage 60 seconds later with some kind of fluff piece interview, because it accomplished nothing. And by the way, it doesn't need to be some huge brand in your portfolio. Some of the best customer stories are smaller shops, and a lot of brands you've never heard of are doing significant business. So just find the right one. And my final negative top three. I don't think I have to say a lot about this, but AI pricing is a complete freaking disaster. Like, it is so
John, what
vague.
do you really want to say here? I mean,
It
quit
is so it
coaching
is
your comment.
it is so vague, confusing, overwrought, presented as well thought when it's not. I think maybe we just have to acknowledge that we haven't figured out how to deal with consumption, flexibility, predictability, and outcomes in the same pricing scheme, and just leave it at that. But it's a complete total mess. No one understands it. Customers don't understand what they're billing and what they're going to pay for. And Brian, to your ROI point, how can you possibly calculate ROI if you don't understand the cost structure? So vendors, for the fall, can you just please figure out AI pricing? Thank you. All right.
Well, I'm glad you ended the diatribe with your own head gasket being blown. So people might blow past mine in the middle of the deal. You get the last word then on that. All right, we've got a couple of humorous things here, so let's get those out of the way. We can move this into the
Oh my
closure.
God.
This to me was like the whiff of the month. The whole idea that somebody actually books a ticket for a robot, gets it on a plane, how they got it through the gate and everything, but it got all the way onto the plane.
Yep.
And then it causes a delay because the pilots and others don't know what to do when you got a robot sitting in a passenger seat. Now, Southwest has amended their policies, their fare policies, where you can't buy tickets for robots. But
I don't know
I've
about
got to give kudos to the person who came up with the brainstorm idea to do this. But, it's a great stunt, but that's what it really is.
I don't know about you, Brian, but I haven't met that particular robot, but I might be more than willing to sit next to that robot compared to a lot of the people that I've sat next to. Doesn't look like it would take up a huge amount of space.
No.
I don't think it would have issue with me touching them, which was a problem in my last flight with someone who wanted never to make contact with the person that they sat on either side to, and when we were in the sardine can together, which is an impossible dream. I might be okay with the robot. Hey, Brian. I just want to comment on that story because someone posted that on LinkedIn, the Southwest story, and they said, what do you think the solution should be? Should people who bring robots be allowed to bring them on the plane, or should they have to go in the cargo hold? And I proposed, I think, a very good compromise, which is anyone who brings a robot should be allowed to travel in the cargo hold with their robot. So I think that's a great compromise. I think it really meets the needs of all parties, including the human who wants to have robots for companion. I'm sure that there's plenty of room in the cargo hold for both. Okay. And now we are back to AI. Tracy says AI usage pricing scares me a little. It feels like they want to get embedded, addicted, and then they can raise the prices. That scares me a little. Yeah, that's part of, there's one of many questions, right? I mean, we can pick this apart from a lot of different angles, and we're still trying to figure it out. I don't have perfect solutions. I will grant you that, but I do think it starts with more simplistic definitions of what we're going to try to do, and then we say we may have to revise these over time, because everyone's struggling with the costs, and no one knows exactly what the costs of the models that they're going to be consuming are either. And then there's the energy costs and all of that. And Thomas says their suppliers, the model vendors, will increase their prices too, burning money like crazy. Indeed, everything's a moving target. I'm not saying it's easy. Just let the bot fly the plane, says Christopher. Well,
well,
Christopher, I don't know.
The problem is,
I was gonna say I would
that's
really
a
like
non-union robot, and that would be a problem for the Airline Pilot Association.
Christopher, I was going to say I'd really enjoy having a nice long flight with you where we could shoot the ship, and now I'm worried because I don't really want a bot flying my plane just yet. Mm-hmm. So you and I might need to take separate flights for a little while until we work this out, but then we can take a flight together. Yeah, I don't know. I've had enough co-pilots, Christopher, in my productivity suites. I don't think I need an AI co-pilot on my plane as well, but I'm all for assisting the human pilot with as much information as possible, though. So sign me up for that course. My whiff. Oh yeah. Well, every week I pick a few of them for hits and misses. I gave Brian a choice of 3, and Brian, you chose the researchers who wanted preschoolers to train AI, preschool teachers in their preschools. What could go wrong, Brian? Can you think of anything here? I don't know.
I don't know how they would ever get the permission. As a parent, I would never give anybody permission for anything like that.
Even if they get like 50% off token usage for like a year on Anthropic or something, let your kid train the AI.
Nope.
That seems like a good deal. What if there are more than 2? Thomas, I don't know, man. We are obviously on the fumes end of our show at this point, but man, it's been a lot of fun getting here.
Well, the second one is the bot in the middle of the process, or the bot in the flow of things, and would correct any bad navigation things that are coming through the algorithms feeding into the first robot. How about that? All right. Well, I think we've already had enough inspiration, and there's been some perspiration with all the head gaskets getting blown. So I think we're at a wrap here, John.
Brian? You got nothing to add, huh? Nothing else inspires, huh? Yeah, I think we're done. By the way, I do want to get back to occasionally having a guest on our show. So our show is designed to put a guest on the couch, but it just wasn't in the cards today, but it will be in the future. Long story short, booking guests on this particular show is a little bit of a project because Brian and I have a certain freewheeling standard of discourse that is not a commercially friendly environment for many people. So, but there are people out there who are a great fit for our show, and it's just a matter of getting them sorted. And so that will happen. But frankly, we've been a little seat of the pants, Brian and I, on the show lately, and a lot of that is on me, not Brian, because Brian always makes our infamous slide deck. Christopher says, the day Claude tells me it can't audit my code module because it's time for Paw Patrol is the last day I use AI. Wow, strong talk on a Friday, Chris.
Oh, that's a great close right there. I'm liking that, Christopher.
Well, hey, big shout out to our audience. Y'all were awesome today.
Agreed.
This is what I always had in mind for this show, which was to, that we would get derailed constantly by what you all had to say. We make us all smarter, and hopefully we can have a little fun with it all too, because the enterprise can get a little bit gritty sometimes. So I'm glad we could have a good time today. I hope you guys have a great long weekend, and catch you again in a few weeks.
Thanks, everybody.
Laters.